using combinations of increases and decreases, make the sweater around this. So it would expand out and one side would keep coming around, which then you would sew up across like where your navel is. It would sew up there. And then you pick up your stitches, do the color work, then finish the front of the here. Bonkers. I don't... Hi everyone, welcome to our first video of 2024. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Troy of Fox and Oak Designs. I'm a fiber artist, I'm a musician, and starting today, I guess I'm technically an accounting student. I like to knit, I like to crochet, I like to spin, and I wax poetic about all the failures I have in crafting and in life. If you like what you see and hear, please consider subscribing to the channel and for more videos. If you're an old friend, welcome back. I hope all of you had a great Christmas or holiday time, whatever you prefer, and had a great year in crafting last year. And I thought it might be fun to have you guys walk down what I was able to accomplish this past year, or most of what I was able to accomplish this last year in crafting, and do a little recap of last year's Maker's Dozen that I kind of forgot about, as well as the epic whip smackdown. That's really hard to say really fast. That Joanne and I did there at the beginning of the year. I don't think either of us actually finished. I know I didn't. I only got 4 of the 6 projects that I had listed and done. And I'm not even going to mention how many she's done because she might think I'm roasting her. If you want to see what I did last year, or at least what I said I was going to do last year for the Maker's Dozen, then go up into the iCard. I think it's up this side to go and watch that video. Spoiler alert, I didn't get everything done. Last year, I can't really lie if you're not going to go watch that video. If you are, I can't lie to you because you can go fact check me. But I didn't even take the time to come up with 12 projects before my Maker's Dozen. Which, you know, let's talk about what the Maker's Dozen is if you're new here or have not heard about it before. The Maker's Dozen was brought to my attention by Simone from Sand and Sky Creations. She was my former co-host here on the podcast there a couple of years back. Now she's a co-host on the Fleece and Harmonies podcast. So if you haven't subscribed, please go support them. Granted, if you are a subscriber of mine, you're probably a subscriber of theirs already. But we love Kim, we love Betsy, we love Simone. Happy New Year to everyone. And I can't wait to see you all at Knit Night there sometime soon, whenever that happens. So anyway, if you're not familiar with what the Maker's Dozen is, it was brought to my attention by Simone of Sand and Sky Creations back, I want to say halfway through 2022, maybe the beginning of 2022. And Simone told me that she found out of it from Hadabashery's, not Haberdashery's, Hadabashery's Instagram page, where Miranda, the person behind Hadabashery, I have to keep looking at the name, otherwise I will say it wrong. Anyway, Miranda challenged herself to use stash yarn and to make a number of items, and instead of a baker's dozen, I'm assuming she's called it a maker's dozen. And her last post on that account at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, showed off her finished items, which she was able to complete 6 items from her stash yarn that year. So she did some pretty good work. Last year, I decided to challenge myself to work through my stash because I had a bigger stash than I do last year. And if you watch the first couple episodes of the Christmas vlog that I did, then you've seen the majority of my stash. I only didn't go through this stuff behind me. So it may not be the biggest stash that is out there, because I know a few people have full rooms of stash. But in my small apartment, I feel like it's a really big stash, and I have well over 100 balls of yarn, most of which that don't have any projects. So I wanted to try to get not rid of, but try to utilize some of that, so that way I could then justify to go buy more yarn. I came up with 7 patterns in that first video, which is up in the iCard here if you want to go look at that. But I was also recommended I was recommended an 8th pattern by a viewer. So I kind of feel like I called that episode in a little bit because I didn't even come up with a Maker's Dozen. But anyway, we're not going to get into that. If you followed the channel over the year, you'll know that I've dealt with a few minor things that has thrown me off my knitting game a little bit. So had a little bit of burnout in the spring. I had tennis elbow in the summer. I left Belfast Mini Mills in the fall. And now in the winter, I'm getting ready to go back to school. So it's been a whole lot of busyness where I haven't been able to like sit down and really enjoy crafting as much as I used to. Anyway, we won't get into that. So I wanted to revisit last year's Maker's Dozen to see how far I got, and I want to start another one this year, so I'm going to go through that too. But looking back at those videos and looking back at text messages and other notes that I had taken in a few different notebooks that are all over the place, I realized I got a lot of things confused. So I'm going to do my best to kind of organize it and explain it the best I can, because I got it confused with the Epic Whip Smackdown that Joanne and I did last year. So Joanne is a friend of mine. You can usually find her down in the comments, chatting with Kat, roasting me on the channel, things like that. And we have this wonderful relationship where we will roast each other for what projects that we've started and not finished. So one of my favorite ones to bring up is the chameleon that is all done except for the arms, which she just, I don't know. She just doesn't want to do it. And maybe every time I pointed out that she has to do it, or she has to finish it, or it's not finished, she's like, because I know I'm exactly that way when someone tells me I have to do something. Anyway, so she's like, you know what? Let's do a whip smackdown. We're going to finish 6 whips, and whoever wins, whoever finishes their 6 whips first gets patterned by Jennifer Beale. And I'm like, yeah, let's do that. And neither of us finished those 6 whips. Neither of us did, because that's who we are as people. So I think I ended up finishing 4 of my 6, and Joanne, I don't remember how many she was able to complete. I think I do remember her saying that she gives up halfway through the year. So Joanne, I've linked a pattern down in the description, Jack Ladder by Jennifer Beale. If you so feel inclined to purchase a pattern for me for my win of the the Epic Whip Smackdown, then it's in the description. Anyway, so the thing I got confused is that I mixed some of my Epic Whip Smackdown. That's really hard to say 7 times. I confused some of those items with my Maker's Dozen, and then I omitted a few things, and it was a whole thing. So I think I'm just going to go through everything that I've done and tell you what I think it is, and then call myself out for the ones that I didn't actually get to. The first project that I had listed on my Epic Whip Smackdown, I'm pretty sure, was the Socks for Dad by the Crazy Sock Lady. So that's what these are. This is, I think technically I finished these in 2022. Oh, I have a window there that's giving me some natural light. I'll try not to put shadows on my face. Anyway, these are the socks. And I'll have a little graphic put up here at some point to give you the stats for nerds. But for now, these are the socks. These are made with Nerds with Needles sock base in the color Earth Magic. And I wear these socks all the time. You can see that I'm starting to get some pilling here at the heel. And if you look really close, you'll see that it's starting to wear a little bit. It's not threadbare, but it's starting to look felted. And that is not because of the yarn. That is because I have put these through the wringer, quite literally. So I learned something very interesting about, I'm going to stop shaking this. I've learned something very interesting about superwash socks and cotton microfiber cloths this year. And that is that if you wash them and put them in the dryer at the same time, the cloths and the socks will stick together like Velcro. So the reason why I was able to figure that out is because, full disclosure, I don't really sort my laundry very well. I sort the whites from the colors, and that's about it. So all of my cleaning cloths, so my microfiber cloths, go in with socks and all of my other regular clothes. So like, the t-shirt stuff. And after I would wash them and put them in the dryer, after I took them out of the dryer, I would have to go and pull my wool socks away from my microfiber cloths and I'm ripping them apart, like as if they were Velcroed. And as time went on, after I continued to wash the socks 2, 3, 4 times, it started to make the socks look felted. They haven't been shrinking, but they look fuzzy and they pill worse. And this sock's not too bad. I have another sock that I will show you here that's much, much worse. But had I been more careful and cared more the first few times, I would have stopped doing it sooner. I have since stopped because one pair of my socks is quite... I'm not going to say that they're ruined, but they aren't as beautiful as they were when I finished making them. Anyway, I love these socks. I wear them all the time. Stats for Geeks are up on the screen if they're not, haven't been already. And when it comes to the pattern, it's really easy to follow. I'm pretty sure it's a 2-row pattern repeat. It's a paid for pattern, so I'm not going to go into any further detail. The yarn itself was a dream to work with. It didn't split. It was really consistent. The color is beautiful. It's showing up a little bit more yellow than it is in real life. It's more brassy than it is what's showing up on the screen. So I followed the pattern pretty close. I did make a couple of changes. So I followed the cuff exactly, but here down at the heel, if you look really closely, get my face out of the screen so it focuses there. Here, I've done a little garter stitch ridge. So that's just 3 garter stitches at the end of each side of my heel there. That's something that I picked up from the Hermione's Everyday Sock by Erica Luder. I think Loader? Sorry. And I really like that little design detail. So I put that into a lot of my socks now. So, and if memory serves, I think... No, that's a slip stitch heel. Never mind. Yeah, so I put that in there. And the other change that I made was in the toe. So in the toe, instead of doing a typical toe, it's going to be kind of hard to see on the form. I will pull this off. Please don't judge. I didn't wash these before I started this. I didn't have time to wash and let it dry. So here, you can see in the toe, I did short rows. So I basically did the opposite of an afterthought heel. The afterthought heel is where you just put in a stitch of work and then you put a toe where your heel is. I did a heel where my toe goes. So this is just a short row heel pattern that I followed. I think this is just a typical German short row. And I finished up the sock and it's great. So I used my Chowgies. I used my Chowgu shorties for these. I'm pretty sure I used a 2.25. I might have used a 2.5. If I had took better notes of these things, I'd something for this year. Anyway, I made the largest sock size. I measured as I went. I did decide to go with the largest sock size. So this is a 72 stitch sock. Typically I do a 64 stitch, but because I was using a smaller needle, I decided to do a bigger sock, like more stitches. So I also decided to do a long cuff. Typically I do about a 6-inch cuff because about after 6 inches I get bored with it. But I forced myself to do a full 8-inch cuff on this. And because I went with a smaller needle, I used more stitches and I did a much longer cuff than I typically do, I ran out of yarn. So I was very close. So what I ended up doing was I ripped back the toe on my first sock when I got to the toe on my second sock, and I ripped about a 1/2 inch out and then redid my toe and then took this yarn from the first sock and put it into the toe of the second sock. So I was able to finish the pair of socks. So there's just barely enough. You might think that the sock's a little bit too small, but keep in mind when you're making a pair of socks, you want them to have a little bit of negative ease in them, so that way they don't slide down your foot here. So it just basically locking my heel and my toe into one place with a good gusseted heel, because that's what makes the heel fit really well. That is perfectly suitable. Had I done a German short row heel instead of a heel flap, then it would not have worked out as well. So just keeping that in mind when you make those kinds of changes. And the sun is coming out. Great. The pattern is down in the description, as well as all of the yarn that I'm using. The description is going to be a novel for this video, so I will try to organize it as best I can, but you can find everything that I talked about in the video down in the description. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I do have a few more balls of this available for out just in my stash. So if you have any recommendations of patterns that use fingering weight yarn, that use beautifully hand-painted yarn, that aren't super boring to do, which is something I find. I buy beautiful yarn like this, and then because I buy beautiful yarn like this, I can't do really complicated stitches because then it's way too busy. I need to, if I'm going to buy yarn like this, I need to let the yarn shine instead of the texture stitches that I love doing shine. So if you can recommend anything, I'll take it. So this was the second object that I had in my Epic Whip Smackdown that I remember. And this is the first one that is in my Maker's Dozen. And after looking at that video, it looks like I started them in 2020 and would have finished them in I started them in 2022 and I would have finished them in 2022 had I not left these at work over the Christmas break. Anyway, so these socks took a really big beating from the year. Ooh, I didn't realize that was going to be a problem. Yeah. So these are the socks. They're really beautiful, but they took a huge beating from those microfiber cloths this year. So this has a really beautiful, it's a wrapped stitch. It's a long strand stitch. That's what's causing that really interesting texture in these little places there. And because those stitches are just hanging out and more of those individual strands are exposed, those microfiber cloths really just messed these guys up. It's still really cute, but you can tell that those sections have started to felt. And that is because of what I've done to the socks. So the only change I made to this pattern, I do believe, is instead of casting on with a long tail cast on, like what is in the pattern, I cast on using the Pearl Soho's long tail tubular cast on. All of that is down in the description. The yarn that I used is the Lichen and Lace. This is Sock Train in the colorway Pumpkin, and I use my Chiagi Shorties for these as well. The pattern itself, very well laid out, very well explained, and the yarn itself was also a dream to work with. It didn't split. I think this stuff is a little bit heavier than the Nerds with Needles stuff, and that makes a really plushy sock in comparison. Not that the Nerds with Needles isn't plushy, but it is a thinner yarn. So it is a thinner yarn. So because it's thinner, it's not going to be as thick as this stuff. The other side of that is that there is more yarn in the Nerds with Needle balls than there are in the Lichen and Lace balls. Or at least until recently. I did get a little notification from Lichen and Lace that she is changing her supplier, or at least the base for her sock yarn, and going with an eco-friendly, an organic version of sock yarn. So I will be interested to see how that changes the texture of her socks. Anyway, so I also ran out of yarn here. I did not do a 8-inch cuff on these. I only did about a 6-inch cuff here, but I did end up running out of yarn. So I basically just stole more from the length of my foot here and made a shorter foot. Socks still fit pretty well. The only thing is that you can tell that they're smaller than the other socks. I don't know if I like that better. If then not, it's just that you can see the articulations of my of my toes when I'm wearing these socks compared to others. And I'm personally, I don't care, but if people don't like feet, maybe they don't want to see that. I don't know. I find that when I wear fun socks, people look at my feet. I've got three more balls of sock yarn from Lichen and Lace left. I've got Christmas Cactus, I've got a pine green color, and I've got another colorway which is called Woods. And it's a really beautiful colorway with autumn colors. If you have any suggestions for that stuff, again, please lend me your ears. The pine can go with anything, but the other two are hand-painted, busy yarns. All right, my next project that I had finished is my Raga sweater. So this is the Raga sweater by Violet McQuade. It is written for Jameson Spindrift yarn, and I did it in Knit Picks palette, and I think that was a great substitute. I didn't have to make any changes to the pattern to work with this yarn because it's just spot on, works exactly the way. Up on the screen here, I'll put the colors that I used in this. So that way you can see that, as well as all of the other fun stuff that I use for this. If you have been watching the podcast for a while, you'll know that this was my 2022 PEI Fiber Festival's sweater. Since a bunch of us were going to knit sweaters to wear at the Fiber Festival, this was going to be mine. However, a couple weeks before the festival, which then got canceled anyway, so it didn't matter, I only had just picked up the second sleeve, and it took me about 3 weeks to do the first sleeve, and I was working on it non-stop. So there's no way I was going to finish it. So I just put it in hibernation. The Fiber Festival didn't happen because of Fiona, so that's all fine. But yeah, I did pick it up this summer and I finished it. My only qualms is that I wish I had started a bigger size last year, because my body grew, so now this doesn't fit. It does fit across the chest and across the shoulders quite nicely, but because of how the corrugated rib is set up, it's corrugated rib and then you're adding stitches. So right here, it likes to bulge out a little bit. And it just so happens that this sits at my belt line, which is where I like my sweaters to sit anyway. This sits at my belt line, and then my love handles are right above my belt line. So they fill out the bulge. So it kind of hugs them a little bit too much for me. So if this is doomed to never fit, then I'll probably just put it in a shadow box and put it on my wall, or just stick it to my wall like I've done the shawl there. Because I think it's a really cool piece of knitting. I'm really proud of it. And I'd rather it not language in a plastic bag in my bottom drawer if I can all help it. I am noticing that even with just talking about it a few little bits, it's already pilling. So I think that's just a characteristic of the loose twist that's in the Knit Picks palette. It is a Peruvian wool, but it is lightly twisted. So keep that in mind. If you are not a fan of pilling, this pills quite easily. I think I've worn this sweater maybe 3 times, and the rest of the time it's in a bag and it's already pilling. So keep that in mind. I bought this yarn when it was super, super on sale. The pattern itself is well organized, and it's really, really succinct. I think it's been designed to work in a leaflet. So the first page is just a beautiful cover page telling you the name of the pattern, the designer, the company that you're supposed to use the yarn for, and that's the entire page. And then the second and third page is just a wall of text. And because it needs to be so succinct to fit everything you need to know in this wall of text, it doesn't hold your hand. So it basically just like, oh, here's the stitches you need to cast on with, and then after you've done this, follow this chart. And then after you've done that, add this many stitches, and then follow this chart. And then work to X amount of rows, right? And then it's just like, all right, while working the chart, decrease. It doesn't tell you how to decrease. Doesn't even recommend a decrease, so you kind of have to make that all up. So I highly recommend that when you're doing this pattern, to print it out on paper that you don't mind marking up on. If you're buying the leaflet, photocopy it if you are like me and you don't like people writing on printed material. So that way you can write on the chart where you're going to be doing your decreases. And maybe you do a couple copies so that way you can decrease them in a way that makes sense to you, because shouldn't have put it down. I didn't, and I just, carried along. And it wasn't until I got to the neck here where I started doing decreases right there that I realized I didn't do any arm shaping. So I didn't do any of this arm shaping that's here. So sorry if this hits the mic, guys, but I didn't do any of this arm shaping. So I just ended up knitting a tube. And not a huge problem, because all that I ended up doing was just, you pick up your stitches on this and then you work in. You don't make the sleeve and sew it in. You pick up your stitches and work from the top down. So I just picked up my stitches where I should have had I done the shaping, and then I cut out the excess. But because I didn't do any of that shaping, I actually ran out of the darkest purple. And I had to buy a third ball of the purple in order for me to finish this sweater. I thought at the time that it was the same dye lot, but after looking at the bands later, when I went back to my secondary bag, the one that I kept at home, and went through the ball bags, different dye lots. But I can't tell you which sleeve I did second, because the colors are close enough. That's a nice thing that you can get away with color work, is that if you have balls of differing dye lots, you can usually get away with using them. I had already mentioned this in the previous episode of me talking about this, which is up in the iCard now, but I did tack down my steeks with ribbon. So this is ribbon that I got from my roommate, and I probably ripped this ribbon out 2 times. I think I did 2 or 3 of them, and it's just because the first couple of times that I sewed them in, I didn't stretch my fabric enough to account for how much it's actually going to stretch over my shoulders. So when I would put it on, it felt like ribbon, since it doesn't stretch. At least this stuff doesn't. It felt like I had a holster around this part of my my shoulders and my arms. So I had to rip it out a few times to get that to fit just right. But now it fits nicely across the shoulders, just not across the love handles. So this is the Raga sweater by Violet McQuade. I really enjoyed making this. I think my only qualm with it is that if I were to do it again, if I were to do it over again, I would do it not the 44 like I did. I would probably do the 48 that's in there, the 46, 48, just so that way I have a little bit of extra room, because as of right now, I can only wear a tank top underneath it if I ignore the love handles. So there's no room for me to wear a t-shirt. So I would do a bigger size. But I've learned my lesson, and we'll talk about that later. So the next big project that I finished this year, that was part of my Maker's Dozen, is the Sylphide Jacket. So this is the Sylphide Jacket, or the back of it. So this is the back of the Sylphide Jacket, and then the real feature of this are the sleeves. So it's got these big balloon sleeves, and there's beautiful bluebells all over it. So if you've watched various episodes of me making this over the past years, you'll know that I did not like this pattern. And it's not that I didn't like what it made, it's that, we'll get into it. So this is the Sylphide Jacket I made for my roommate Jessie, and it is by Fabel Knitwear. It's got a beautiful, like, what's it called? Square shape neckline. It's really cute. It's got raglan sleeves. Like, I like a lot of the elements in this pattern. I just don't like how the pattern was written. So it is meticulously written out, but there are no charts. And I feel like a chart could have been very helpful to do the bluebells in the right place. And it has been released in two languages. Norwegian is what it was written in, and then it was translated to English, I believe, by the designer. I think she is bilingual, and she does a great job. It's easily understood. The problem is that both languages are released in the same PDF. So the pattern itself is like 55 pages long, and that is partially because it's meticulously written out, and the first half of it is in Norwegian, and the second half of it is in English. And I think it would be better for both if it was just released as 2 separate patterns in 2 different languages. So that's a nitpicky thing. But the really things that bothered me is that this pattern wasn't graded properly, and it's not size inclusive. I ended up having to make a new size, basically just basing this cardigan off of her pattern in order for me to make something that would fit my roommate properly. So the pattern size says that it goes up to a 46-inch bust, which would have been fine if that were actually the case. But if you were to take in the stitches that you cast on to make your cardigan and compare that to the gauge that you're supposed to be working at, that only ever actually lines up for the small. It doesn't quite work for the extra small, doesn't quite work for the medium. And when you get up to the largest bust size, which is supposed to be 46 inches, if you extrapolate what the gauge would say it would be, it's only 38 inches. So really it makes a medium size as the extra large. So it's just, I was frustrated. I contacted the designer, and she said that she understands that it's not size inclusive. She has since put a note on her pattern there that she understands it's not size inclusive. She didn't want to release the pattern, because it is a paid pattern. She didn't want to release a paid pattern that was fully graded because she didn't have any test knitters that would be able to test knit those sizes. And she is willing to send the pattern to people for free to test knit. I contacted her, she apologized, she knew that, and I'm like, okay, cool, I will send that along to you, what changes I've made. And I truthfully have not done that. Not because I have any sort of vendetta or anything like that. It's just, truth be told, I forgot to. And now I can't be bothered because I didn't keep my notes from this. And I'd have to do it all over again. The yarn that I use is Belfast Mini Mills Island Collection Fingering. So it's 100% merino. And it turned out quite nice. It's a finer yarn than what the pattern calls for. So I wouldn't recommend using it or another fingering weight yarn. I would probably end up using something like a Briggs & Little's 1-ply, or if you want a beautifully hand-painted one, Lichen and Lace makes their Rustic Heather Sport, I think is what they call it. It's from Briggs & Little. It's the same base, but they dyed in-house. I think that would be great for this, if you're okay with like a more rustic-y yarn. Otherwise, a Malabrigo Superwash Sport would work wonders in something like this. Just try not to get too busy because the bluebells get lost quite easily. Even in this heathered yarn, it kind of gets a little bit lost. You have to really look. You have to really look for them. All right, so the next thing is Duck Duck Goose, which in between me recording this episode the first time and me recording it now, I don't know where it went. I honestly don't know where it went. I ripped apart my room. I ripped apart both my closets. I looked through random places. I don't know what happened to them. So I'll do a quick little discussion. I'll put, if I have pictures of them, I think I do. I'll put them up on put the one that I've completed on the screen. So it is the Duck Onesiegarumi pattern that I've been basing these off of. It's by Sascha. And I was making 2 white ducks and I was going to make a bigger goose. The person that I was going to make that for is no longer in my life, so I'm not going to be completing this project. And this is the first of the projects that I didn't finish out of my Maker's Dozen. I was also using core wool, is what we called it. It was wool that was not of the type of softness that we would put in our yarns at BMM, so we sold it as core wool, so that way felters or people who wanted to stuff things could use real wool to stuff it. And that's what I was using. So instead of me talking about the pattern, so I should say, the pattern, really easy to follow. It was written in Dutch and then translated to English, so the formatting's a little bit different from what you might expect, but it's really, really straightforward. It's meticulously written out. It's a great pattern. I highly recommend that one. So I'm going to talk about what happened with the last video that I did here. So I recorded this video here. For me now, it is New Year's Eve. So I'm going to quickly do this video and have it out tomorrow, New Year's Day. My plan was to have this video out yesterday, the 31st, and I had recorded this. So today is Saturday. No, today is Sunday. I had recorded this on Tuesday. I recorded this the first time on Tuesday. Had everything sorted out. It took me 2 hours to record it. Recording in 4K, whole thing. Transferred to my computer. Took 2 hours to do that. And then I was just pecking at editing it, right? So yesterday I tried to do, so this is the 30th, I tried to do like a big chunk of the editing. So I was putting in like the chyrons, so like the pop-ups that come at the bottom of the screen to tell you what I'm talking about. Putting in the chyrons, cutting out the ums, the ahs, the me getting up and getting down and all of those things. Cutting that out, spent almost 4 hours doing that. And then I took a break. And then I decided to play a video game, and because of limitations of my computer and stuff, I have this game on the same jump drive that I had the video on. So after playing this game, the video file got corrupted on my jump drive. And I had already deleted the file from my phone because it was taking up all the space left on my phone. So I could not even recover all the work that I had done. And I was quite upset about that yesterday. So we're getting this a day late, maybe 2, we'll see. Still learning, and now I know not to delete any files until after the video has been uploaded to YouTube. My bad. Sorry, guys. Anyway, so the next project I've got is the music hoodie. So if you've been following this podcast from the very beginning, you know that I've been working on this since the very beginning. So this is my music hoodie. So this started off as a kind of Troy is Jealous project. So back in 2019, when I first became aware of Jennifer Beale and her patterns, I was blown away, and continue to be, by her non-traditional construction and how beautiful her sweaters always turn out to be, right? The patterns are just gorgeous. And from everyone that I know that have made one of her patterns, they said that they're like so well put out. They're graded wonderfully. I was just super jealous. The problem I had is that all of her patterns at the time, or at least from the ones that I had seen at the time when I was making this, I'm not going to sit here and say that I painstakingly went through all of her patterns at that point. I did find, anyway, I was jealous because all of the ones that I had come across at that point, they were feminine in shaping. And I don't know what was going through my mind, but like I was not confident enough in my own knitting to masculinize the shaping of her patterns. But I somehow thought I had the capability to design my own ridiculously imagined and constructed garment. So this is the beginnings of that. So what this is a mandala that I had knit. To give you more details on what this mandala is, this mandala is based off of a digital representation of the synapses your brain has when it hears you play D flat on the piano. D flat above middle C. And I realize now how out of fucking left field that is. But that's where this started. So this was my music hoodie. Like, I think I was just trying too hard to be like so deep about this. This was supposed to be inspired by my favorite piece of music that I played in my undergrad. So as I mentioned, I'm a musician. If you're new here, my major instrument is the clarinet. I'm also a singer. And my favorite piece going through my undergrad was Debussy's Premier Rhapsody. And it is in D flat for the clarinet. So I'm like, oh my God, I want D flat. Forgetting that the clarinet is a transposing instrument. So when I play D flat on my clarinet, it's not actually D flat, it's B natural that I'm playing. So it's wrong to begin with. And then the other piece of color work that was supposed to be on it was from a specific rip of music. I was going to do a like a bar of color work to represent like that specific rip, which was my favorite thing to play. So the idea was we're going to start with the mandala, work from the center, work your way out, and then this is the back of the sweater. And then I was supposed to, using combinations of increases and decreases, make the sweater around this. So it would expand out, and one side would keep coming around, which then you would sew up across like where your navel is. It would sew up there. And then you pick up your stitches, do the color work, then finish the front of the here. Bonkers. I don't know. This is why I don't know what was going through my mind. Because apparently I thought I was good enough to be able to come up with something so ridiculous, but I didn't know enough about shaping to masculinize shaping in a project. Troy's a funny boy. Anyway, so I've decided that I'm not going to be doing the full hoodie anymore. So this is the second of the two projects from my Whip Smackdown that I did not complete and will not be completing. So I think what I'm just going to do with this is maybe just continue with the white a little bit, just so that way I have enough white to put this into a large embroidery hoop and just put it on the wall. I think it's a really cool piece of knitting. Like it's really neat. I like it. I like it a lot. So I don't want to just like toss it and keep it in a bag like I have for the last 4 years at this point. It should see the light of day. That's my story about that. This is made out of Belfast Mini Mills Island Collection worsted in white and black, and the multicolor that's in here is just a white skein that had been rainbow painted by Linda there in the first years. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that. So the next thing on my list is the Peacock Shawl. So the Peacock Shawl is by the Knit Picks yarn team. The Knit Picks design team, and it's really cool. I've talked about this a couple of times, More so of, I need to finish this. I started this when I had my store back in I'll show you the right side. Back in 2018, 2019. I think I started this in 2019. And then after I closed my store, I stopped working on this. So this is what the shawl looks like so far. It's called the Peacock Shawl because these are all peacock feathers. So you can kind of see the ridgings. You can't really see my thumb, but you can see the ridges there of the feathers. If you know what a peacock feather looks like, you know I'm pretty close to being done. So I have no excuse not to finish this, other than the fact that it's a lot of knitting. I think I'm up to like 600 stitches on this now. It's a pie shawl, so this, I'm holding the center of the shawl, and this is how much I have knit, and I have about this much more to go. So it's just getting to be more and more knitting as time goes on. I'm also doing beads in it. I don't know how well you can see that, but I'm doing beads in here, going up the spines of the feathers. And I've even color coordinated them. So like the beads that I'm using, they're like oil slick. So they're green, blue, and purple with the green, blue, and purple and turquoise yarn. Although you can't really see much of the green. There's more green in here than there is turquoise. I'm using beads that are kind of like oil slick beads, but some of them skew more purple, some of them skew more blue. Most of them are green. It's like a green oil slick, a green iridescent one. So the majority of them are green. So what I had done is I bought a few tubes of this and I sorted them out by green, blue, and purple, and then I'm putting purple purple lines, green lines, blue lines. I think I have enough to finish, but I might have to go buy more because I do have... Oh no, I should be fine. I've got 2 more big tubes. I'll hold this so that way I can actually show them. These are Mizuki beads. So this is the good shit. And I've organized them into green, and I think I've got at least one more in here. Yeah, green and purple. So I will sort them out as time goes on and finish this thing. I do have a story about the yarn though. The yarn is VJ Fibres silk. So this is mulberry silk. And the story, I should say this is VJ Fibres Allegro. This is the color Opal. It is showing up more vibrant blue and purple on the screen. There is more green in this. I would say the dominant color is blue, but the next dominant color is like a peacock green, but it's showing mostly blue and purple on the screen. Blue and turquoise, really. Anyway, so I got this here in 2018. I'm going to say 2018, beginning of 2018. And the story behind this is... the story behind this is that the company that makes this yarn, the yarn is lovely to work with. The reds like to bleed, keep that in mind. But the person who I dealt with most in that company was not a pleasure to work with. I'll just put it that way. So I bought this yarn because Barati is her name. She's one of the owners of this. It's a family-run company. She was doing a trunk show in Charlottetown, I think, and Linda from Belfast Mini Mills brought her down to my shop so that way I could meet her. So at that point, I'm pretty sure that Barati is, well, I mean, I think the only thing that Linda was buying from Barati at that point was just raw silk, so that way she could put it into the yarns that we made at BMM, and that's who I continued to buy silk from when I was there. But Barati wanted to sell the yarn that she made. So Linda brought her down to me to see if I'd be willing to pick up some of the balls of yarn. And I looked at her yarn and she has beautiful, beautiful yarn. And because she was doing a trunk show, not only did she have yarn, but she had finished projects using the yarn. And I spent a lot of money, and in some cases specifically, so that way I could get the patterns for the yarn, for the items in the trunk show. The one in particular that I'm still a little salty about is that there was a pullover that she had that was beautifully knitted. It was like a loose, airy sort of knit. So I think it was using like a fingering weight, but like using DK size needles, so like a 4mm or something like that. So it was really really like open. The stitches were open, but then the sleeves, it was like a raglan sleeve sort of deal, and the sleeves were all lace work. And I really wanted to make that so that way I could sell in my shop. So she said that she would give me the pattern if I bought 2 balls of the yarn that the pattern uses. And I'm like, cool, I'll do that. The balls for me to buy wholesale were $45 a piece. So in order for me to make money from, so $45 American, I should say American dollars. So in order for me to make money off of it, I had to sell it in my store for I think I had it on for $94.99. So $95 Canadian. So I think I was only making like $25 a ball from this stuff. So it was really expensive. I bought 10 balls. I spent well over $450 for that. And strike one, I bought some yarn specifically to get patterns, and I thought, oh, she'll send me the PDFs later. No. She just told me where I could go buy the pattern. She would tell me the name of the pattern. So that's what she meant. Strike one. Strike two. I rolled off the 2 balls I bought of this color. And although it's getting a little haggard in here now, if you look closely, these 2 balls are different sizes. They are different sizes. So I rolled off these 2 balls. One of them, I think this one, well, obviously this one was like 86 grams, and this was like 110. No, not 110, like 107. Like there's more. This is a bigger ball, and this is a smaller ball. They're supposed to be 100 grams. So I contacted the company through their Facebook page because I'm a millennial, and obviously I will not call somebody unless I absolutely have to. And I didn't get a response. So a couple weeks later, after waiting for that long, I went through my records and I found her phone number and I called her and told her, okay, what do I do in this instance? Because like if I had told this to a customer that came back like, I don't have any more of this yarn. Like, what's your policy for this? And she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'll take care of that for you. So the fact that no one was watching their Facebook page was strike 2 for me, right? But she sent me the ball of yarn for free. And I believe that ball of yarn it's either this larger one or it's in here already. So I have 3 balls of this. I have lots of yarn to finish this. So then strike 3 for this person came when I was working at BMM, and she contacted the company, or rather, after I contacted her to buy silk from her because I needed more silk, she asked me if I'd be willing to make yarn for her so that way she could sell wool yarn. And I'm like, sure, I can do that for you. Here, I'll send you some stuff. So I sent her some stuff, and then after a little while, she received it and she looked through it. She called and she's like, hey, I want to talk more about this. Can I have your personal cell phone number so I can call you when I'm properly free? And I'm like, well, we can talk now because you just called me on the store phone and it came to me, right? And she's like, no, I feel better if I have your personal cell phone number. So full disclosure, I don't give out my cell phone number to people. I give it out very rarely, okay? And when it comes to work-related stuff, which I would include this really, I don't give people my cell phone. And that's because I worked in tech support. And there were horror stories of like customers who were angry at agents, and also agents doing the opposite, going up people's Facebook pages, taking cell phone numbers off of Facebook pages, and then harassing agents, and then also agents harassing customers. And I didn't want that to happen. So those of you who have seen my Facebook page know that my full name's not on that Facebook page, and my cell phone's not there because I don't give out my cell phone. And I'm very protective of that. If you are a customer of Belfast Mini Mills, you'll know that even when you've asked, hey, can you just text me a picture of this product? I'm like, no, give me your email and I'll send you an email. It's because I don't want people to have my cell phone number. I was very meticulous in making sure that nobody got my cell phone number. And a couple of times when it was given out without my permission, well, you can't reprimand your boss, but I made sure that they knew that that was not appropriate. Anyway, she asked me to give her my cell phone number. I think it was 4 or 5 times across 4 or 5 different phone calls. And then after I told her that I would never give her my personal cell phone number, just clear, I'm never going to give you my personal cell phone number. And I pointed out that at that point, when you call the store during business hours and nobody's in the store to answer it, it comes to my cell phone anyway. So you don't need my cell phone number. The strike 3 was her continuing to ask after I said no multiple times. I think that peeved her off because I never heard from her again. So anyway, that was my story about that. So that's the Peacock Shawl by the Knit Picks design team. So the next thing I want to talk about is Little Wave. Not Little Waves, like I've said dozens of times in the past. And editing the previous episode. I said it a few more times in that episode. It's Little Wave by Gundrun Johnston. If you watched the Fox and Oak closet cleaning, you've already seen this, but this is the sleeve from the first rendition of this. So I'm using McCausland's 2-ply. So this is McCausland's 2-ply in the color Green Heather, and I love the color of this yarn. You can see all the different pops of different colors in the green. Beautiful. I love this yarn. I love this yarn. If you're not familiar with McCausland's yarn, it is a rustic yarn. It's, I wouldn't say it's next to the Skin Soft. I don't mind it, but if you don't like scratchy things, this is a scratchier wool. McCausland's is more well known for their blankets. So if you're familiar with like the old Hudson Bay blankets, it's that kind of blanket. And they make lots of those blankets. If you buy their yarn in the natural, you can still smell the lanolin from it. And in fact, you can still smell sheep off the colored stuff, but like it's been washed considerably more because they don't wash all the lanolin out of it because it works in the machines better, I'm pretty sure. So anyway, when I bought this yarn, I bought this yarn back in October of 2022. Does that sound right? That sounds right. October 2022. And that is when the management or the owners of Belfast Mini Mills decided that they wanted to cut down the floor space of the store, which turns out was the beginning of the end. But anyway, one of the products that we decided to drop was McCausland's 2-ply. And what we ended up doing was just selling it at cost, putting it in a big bin, telling people it's $3 a ball. If you buy 5 balls, you get the 6 free, something like that. Like, it was just ridiculous to get. It was a ridiculous sale to get all of it gone. So before we put that sale on, I took the last 6 balls of this that we had to make sure that I could make a sweater out of it. And I wanted to do Little Wave by Gundrun Johnston because it's the right size, and I wanted a more rustic-y yarn for outdoor cardigans and that sort of thing. So I knew from the get-go that 6 balls was not enough to make the cardigan because I was going to make a size that required 1,500 yards, and I only had, I think it worked out to be like 1320 because each of these have 220 yards in them. And I had 6 of these balls. So I did a number of things to try to save some yarn. So like the sleeves are actually supposed to be long enough for you to fold them back over. I cut that fold out. There was pockets in it. I removed the pockets, or I was planning on removing the pockets. I never got that far. And the other thing I was planning on doing was there's cabling that's on the back of the sweater. And I was just going to do a plain back to save as much yarn as possible. But as time went on, I realized more and more, I don't have enough yarn. I don't have enough yarn. So this went into hibernation. And then over the course of this past year or so, since I decided to put this in hibernation, I have been like not going out of my way to go find it. But when I was in stores that I know sell McCausland's wool, I would go walk over and take a gander and see if they had the color I was looking for. So I bought a number of these balls and I bought a couple of 3-ply balls by mistake while doing this, but I was able to find enough balls. And at my last count, I have 10 of these balls now instead of just 6. So not only do I have enough yarn to make this cardigan now, I have enough yarn to make the proper size for myself, not a size where I would just wear it open all the time, but a proper size for myself and without making, like, saving anything. So the size I'm going to be making only requires 1,800 yards. I have 2,200. So that is going to be my next big project as well. But we'll get more on that later here. So last little thing about the Little Wave pattern. It is so well laid out. Like, it is amongst the best laid out patterns I've ever seen. I have pattern design envy because I wish my patterns were laid out as well as Gundrun Johnston's patterns. Yeah, I'm very excited to start that start that again as a project. I'll go into more detail about that later. So the next thing is the Mijo Crochet Lost in Time shawl. I started this between Christmas and New Year's last year on a visit to go see Simone, and then I haven't touched it. The first time I did this project was when I had COVID back in 2021, and I just wanted to do another one because it's a really, really beautiful design. It's really, really nice, and you can use any size yarn you want. You can use any size hook. It just changes the size of your finished project. It's a free pattern. It's pretty well laid out. My only qualm with it is that it tells you to use stitches, but does not tell you how to do the stitches. And in the stitch dictionary, it's just, oh, if you don't know how to do this very specific stitch, which is a puff stitch, which changes on every pattern that you do, because a puff stitch can have multiple different variations of it. It just links you to a different page, going back to their blog that has a lot of ads on it, which the ads are safe and all of that. It's annoying trying to like flip through this page that has dozens of different stitches on it, where you have to go find it through a bunch of ads. Just annoying. So the first time I did it, after I got frustrated trying to figure out how to do one of the different variations of the puff stitches, I just started making shit up. That's what I've been doing with this. Otherwise, it's a really well laid out pattern. If you know enough about crochet that you can fudge a puff stitch to make it look like what the pattern's calling for instead of going to that, I highly recommend it. My second last, this is the second last thing. This is the second last thing I had on my Maker's Dozen, and this is the Ravishing Socks. So this is by Nancy Wheeler, and you can see a beautiful design detail going down the sock. It goes down both sides. I really loved this pattern, and I still love this pattern. I think it's exquisite. Like I don't have enough nice things to say about this because the words don't exist in the language that I know. The pattern's really well laid out. I think it's called a blossom stitch. It's a little difficult to get used to. And since I was using my Chiaogu shorties, those are sharp needles. So those Chiaogu holes, man. But really love the sock. I don't think I changed anything about the sock in this pattern, which I normally do change something. But I might have done twisted German cast on, alternating with a long tail cast on. I might have done that. I don't remember, but I really love this pattern. And if you haven't followed the podcast, this pattern was done in this yarn, which is Belfast Mini Mill Specialty Sock, because, not because of a spat, I'm not going to call it a spat, but Troy was feeling defensive about a review that was it wasn't super positive about the yarn that the designer of this sock yarn, Nancy Wheeler, Nip Sip Happy, her channel's down below. She made a sock out of Belfast Mini Mill's yarn, and she gave it a negative review. And that's what it was. She gave it a negative review, saying that she had a lot of issues with it splitting, which is true. She had a lot of issues with like inconsistent yarn, which I'll talk about here in a second. So after that review went through and I watched it and all of that, I was a little defensive at the time, and in my next video that I did, I talked about how twist affects yarn and explained different things. So looking back, like quickly before that video, and then later once my feelings had settled about it afterwards, I went back and I really looked at her previous order. And it turns out that, and I did touch on this in the video, that Nancy bought older versions of our sock yarn. So before I had the power to change things like I did there towards the end, I was just following the recipes as necessary, right? And unfortunately, the recipe that we were using to spin, we were using to spin at Belfast Mini Mills, was not suitable for sock yarn. It was way too lightly twisted, and coupled that with the fact that Belfast spins their yarn opposite of what most places do. If you are a Western style knitter, so continental, East, English, that kind of thing, you, as you knit, you actually untwist our yarn as you go, making splitting stitches that much more of an issue, right? That was the case of the yarn that she had there. And so when Simone and I were working there, so back in 2022, I want to say beginning of summer, late spring, that time period, Simone brought to my attention that, she had made a pair of socks out of our yarn and it was going threadbare pretty quickly. So we decided that we would go back, change the formula, add more twist in both the spin and in the ply to help make the yarn more to make it more resilient and less prone to pilling. So at the time, when I was going to make this pattern anyway, I was going to use my pine lichen and lace that was what I was going to use. I wasn't even going to use Belfast Mini Mills. But I decided to use Belfast Mini Mills yarn and went through, and it's made a beautiful sock. This is an old colorway. This is from the before times, before Simone and I had modified the recipe to make it better. And at the time I finished it, I'm like, oh yeah, it's fine. Now, after having these socks for, I think I finished these in August. I've had them for 5 months. I wear them quite often, but I don't wear them often enough for them to be pilling as bad as they do. And I know that has been a constant complaint of customers, and the stock response that I had been given by my bosses is that all yarn pills, which is true. And I did have a cardigan that pilled quite badly, but that's because I was washing it poorly, and that's what I thought all it was. But I have never put these in the washing machine. These have always been hand washed, and they are still pilling quite badly. So I'm sorry for anybody who has purchased the yarn that I made between 2019 and beginning of 2022, especially the sock yarn, for pilling so badly. I know that the stuff that we had been spinning later, because we upped the twist of most things just to make it pill less often. I feel much better about that product that I made back then, but it doesn't matter now because the store's closed. So I do expect these socks here to eventually wear out at the heel and toe, which I'm kind of excited for, because then I get to show you how to use a darning egg. So I am purposefully going to try to wear these out, so that way I can show you how to do that. But I don't have enough nice things to say about this pattern. It's just exquisite. I really love this pattern. The last thing that was on my maker's dozen that I finished is, of course, the Entwined Queen shawl. I love this shawl. It's so nice. I kind of broke my own rules with this one, though. So the Entwined Queen shawl is by Julia Decker. I used Malabrigo sock and Ultimate sock for this. And the original colors that I had chosen to do this was the Frank Ochre, which is the yellow that I did use, and then Diana, which is another hand-painted. It's a beautiful skein of yarn. It is quite heavy in yellow, similar to this Frank Ochre, which the Frank Ochre is more like Dijon mustardy color. It's not quite as bright as it's showing up on the screen. I had picked this for that, and when I started it here in August, was it August? I guess it might have been July. It might have been July, might have been June. When I started it this summer, using the original colors, there wasn't enough contrast. So I ended up going back to the Woolen Tart in Wolfville to go buy a contrast color, and I bought Wales Road, which is Malabrigo's Ultimate sock. I love this pattern. It's beautiful in the front. It's beautiful on the back. It's a really good pattern for learning how to do brioche, especially cabled brioche. Not only is the written instructions like super well laid out, the charts are also color coded, which was ingenious. I love that for you, Julia. I'm shamelessly stealing that next time I do a cabled piece. The cables are gonna be color coded. Just fantastic. The pattern was laid out really well. I didn't have any problems with making the pattern. Yeah. So last time I talked about this, which is up in the description here, or iCards. Last time I talked about this, I said that I made a major mistake in the pattern, and I challenged you guys to find where the mistake was. And no one in the comments that I could see could point it out. But I will show you that the mistake is right here. That's the mistake. So you're supposed to have these like little loopy things go all the way across, all the way up, including here. So you'll see down lower, I've got it. I forgot to do it right there. So that's the mistake that I made. Other than like some other minor ones, like putting a pearl was where I wasn't supposed to. So that was the major mistake that I made. The last thing that I had listed on my Maker's Dozen was recommended from a viewer. I know which viewer that was, but I can't remember if she's okay with me saying her name. So if you want to identify yourself down in the comments, please feel free to do so. But it's the Musselburgh hat by Ysolda. So I queued it up, and then in typical Troy fashion, completely forgot that my queue existed and never touched it again. So I completely forgot it existed. Like this pattern existed. So I didn't even buy the pattern yet. It's just on my wish list. I do have this skein of yarn that I was going to do it in. I have since removed this from my newer queue. We'll get into that later, just because I have other projects I want to do. But I'm going to hold on to this yarn for that project. This is one of the things I finished there last year. This is wrapping paper, the colorway wrapping paper from Good Vibrations. I think this is Polwarth in silk. I think it's Polwarth in silk. So that was the last thing on my list. So I have been rattling off here. I have a script here. I was saying I feel like I've been rattling off, but I have been rattling off for me, an hour and 20 minutes at this point. So I was going to talk about a few other things like the skeins that I had done and some of the spinning that I had done, but we're going to leave that to the wayside because I want to get into the actual this year's Maker's Dozen. So the first thing that I want to talk about here in my Hadabashery, I wrote that wrong there, the Hadabashery Maker's Dozen. I'm going to do it again this year, and my goal for this year is to finish these 12 items using my stash without buying any more yarn until these 12 items are finished. And some of these are big projects, so I've got some work to do. The first thing that I'm going to be doing is a collab that I shouldn't have done before Christmas, but things fell by the wayside for me, I'm afraid. But I'm doing a pattern collab with Red Island Fibres. I am designing a pattern for for her yarn. So I am using some of her Eco Process DK in the colors Grey Day, and I believe this is Into Fall, or this is Fall. I will put the names on the screen here if I'm incorrect. And I think these are beautiful together, so I'm going to be doing a pattern. I am just testing out some brioche stitches with it currently. I don't know if it's going to be brioche or not. I think what I have so far is a little bit too complicated, but I fell in love with two-colored cabled brioche because of the Entwined Queen shawl, so I want to kind of do something there, but we will see. So this is what I've got so far, and as time goes on, I will finish this, and I will be making this available either through my Ravelry store, or since I'm giving Amanda of Red Island Fibres full control over what happens with this pattern here, I might make it available in my Ravelry store, or it may only be available in her store as a kit, or something to that effect. That kind of stuff hasn't been sorted, and right now I have it sitting in a new bag that I got from my roommate for Christmas. So this is the new knitting bag, and yes, it does say that I do love a good fingering, because that's the kind of person I am. It's made from the same materials as my other bag that she made for me last year, just in reverse. So it's the same linen, it's the same cotton. I think the lining material is a little bit different. But anyway, it's got a drawstring. The only changes to this one compared to last year is that Jess put pockets on the inside. Here, using the leftovers of the lining here. So I've got pockets on the inside. I found that many of the pockets on the outside, because unless I had the bag completely filled with yarn, things would just fall out of it. So now I've got those pockets that are suitable for needles and stuff on the inside, and I don't have to worry about that. But there is still a big pocket here on the back. I just hit the mic, I'm sorry. Big pocket here on the back that has a sheep button, a little wooden sheep button. It's really cute. It's really cute. Can you see it? Is it going to be in focus? No, it's really cute. And then the I love a good fingering. Anyway, so that's project number one. Project number two that I'm going to be doing is going to be an if and when sort of thing. If or that. We'll say that, because this is going to be using Fleece and Harmony's Rainbow Sock. So this is Fleece and Harmony's Rainbow Sock. I bought this a couple years ago. This is the point print sock, available in 6 20-gram balls, 6 100-yard balls, which that would make these a little bit more than 25 grams a piece. So I got 6 100-yard balls, and the pattern that I'm going to be doing is cantilever. I think it's how it's pronounced, maybe cantilever. by General Hog Buffer. And that is optional for now because I'm holding off on starting these until Fleece and Harmony fully decides whether or not they're going to do a sock cal there in February. They're currently doing a Marie Wallen make-along that I missed. I didn't take part in. But if they're going to do sock one, which they have mentioned that they might do on a previous episode, then I'm going to hop on that. If I find out there in February that they're not going to do a sock, then I will start with the cantilever one. If they are doing a sock cal and it's a specific pattern designer, then I will do that instead. And I will probably just go to Fleece and Harmony, buy a different ball. Point brand sock yarn, because I want to use this for the cantilever. It's a really cool slip stitch pattern, and I think what I'm going to do is it's for 3 colors, but I'm going to use 3 colors per sock, so that way I can have rainbow socks. So I have socks for pride. The third thing that I'm going to complete this year, or I'm going to work on, is the Peacock Shawl. It's time. I really have no excuse not to do it anymore because I know how to join yarn. I know how to bead. I do shawls. It's been in hibernation for 6 years. 6 years? 5 years. Beginning of 2019. So it's going to be 5 years now. It's time for me to finish it. So that's going to be my next big lace project. To break the habit of me not including my spins as me trying to get rid of my stash, like from last year, I am going to finish this. So this is 100% merino that we had at Belfast Mini Mills. It's showing more red on camera than it truly is. It's actually more blue. So like these sections here, the light stuff, it's full lilac in real life, not red violet like it's showing on screen. So I'm just going to be working on this. I'm going to be using my Turkish spindle for this, so that way I can have some fun with my Turkish spindle. This is going to be my one of my first spinning projects. So that is number 4. There's no pattern included. And of course, all the patterns that I'm going to be talking about are listed down below. And if you're watching this video later in time, I will make a point to put the pattern down below for the Red Island Fibres collab in the future. So that way you can have access to that too. My next big sweater project is going to be, of course, the Little Wave by Gundrun Johnston. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip out the sleeves that I have here. Although I got to point out again, these sleeves don't have waste yarn holding on the majority of the stitches. I just have a little bit of waste yarn for like the underarm stitches, and it hasn't let go. So that tells you that this yarn has quite a bit of tooth to it. So it's gonna be a very, very well wearing cardigan once I finish it. So that's my 5th project. My 6th project, because I'm trying to break this down into things that I could use into big projects and small projects. My next project is going to be Fallopia, also by General Hog Buffer. If you haven't checked the Ravelry page for that designer, for General Hog Buffer, please do. It's so cool. The patterns are so cool. They're so cool. So Fallopia is a cabled pattern, and I'm going to use Red Island Fibres, eco-processed organic merino, and in the color Fairy Dust. So it's, are you going to focus on that? Yeah, okay, perfect. So actually it is showing perfectly today, not like last time. So it is beautiful, like dove gray with like splashes of blue, purple, and pink to it. And I think the majority of this being a speckled yarn, I think this will be not busy, it'll be quiet enough, unbusy enough for me to do that really complicated cable, which is up on your screen. I can't wait to do these. I'm also going to try out a new heel. The stuff that I have here is from her first run of the fingering weight, which is just merino. There's no nylon in this. So I'm going to try a different heel that is supposed to make heels last longer. And we'll see how that works out. So the next project that I have here, which is going to be the biggest project that I have on my list, is lace wings. So if you remember from earlier in the spring, before I had my little burnout, which is this unfortunately was part of the reason why I was burning out, was working on lace wings. So this is a skein, or a ball at this point, of 1-ply lace weight that I spun from Good Vibrations. This one is BFL in silk, I'm pretty sure. And it's knitting up beautifully. Like that gradient, stunning, fantastic. The problem I had at this point, where I am at, is that I was using an Italian pattern to do a lace project, and this is all the pattern that it included. That's it. This is as big as it gets. Like there's edging that I could add to it, but that's as big as it gets, and I still have all of this yarn. So this is basically a color repeat. So going from, it's easier to see on camera actually, going from like this reddish pink magenta color all the way to the green, like that's basically half of a color repeat. So it does that swap between those colors, from going pink to green, back through blue to pink. It does that 10 times in this ball. That was the entire pattern. So I have to do a lot more designing for this. So I kind of just put it to the side. So I think this is going to be my next big lace project that I design. I might push this back towards the end of the year because I have other lace projects that I want to do, but I want to do something that is going to do this yarn justice. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is ripping this out and starting over and actually designing something before I start, instead of me just winging it now and then adding stuff later. I want to make something that's going to look like dragonfly wings, or something that looks like butterfly wings, just because this yarn is so cool. So that is the next one. And of course I'm using a gift bag that Joanne made for me. The next thing is my Shetland spin, which of course is out of reach. So my Shetland spin. So this is from the Long Way Homestead fiber subscription of the month spinning thing that I've been doing. And I think that this is going to be what I use to potentially revive the Shetland lace knitting little project thing that I was doing at the beginning of the year, which was, again, some of the burnout that I was experiencing. We'll see how things, because I'm not making any promises. But this is Shetland wool, and I'm spinning it as fine as I can, and I'm going to be doing a 2-ply. This is one of the bobbins of the 2-ply, so I have the other half just sitting in a bag that I need to finish. And I'm going to spin it as fine as I can to make a 2-ply lace. And then I'm going to knit something out of that using traditional stitches. So number 9, that's on my list, has been on my knitting list since 2017, actually. But I haven't started it. So this yarn is the alpaca silk that I talked about there in the vlog. For those who didn't watch that, this is alpaca and silk. It's a chain construction yarn. Belfast Mini Mills bought this the year before I started to help fill out the store because they were running behind. When I started that spring, they decided to sell this off to a person who was looking to buy yarn at wholesale. So they sold all of this off to them. And before they sold that off, I bought a few balls because it was a steal. I think I got them for like $8 or $9 a ball. I bought 4 balls of this stuff, and I then went and I bought beads. So I have some glass beads here, and I think I'm going to go buy some more. I think these are from Michael's, so it shouldn't be too hard for me to buy them. But I'm going to use this yarn to make Amule by Emily Ross. Picture up on here on the screen. It's a really gorgeous stole type of shawl that is interestingly constructed, like you're picking up stitches and doing different sections all at different times. It is beaded throughout the beast. So I'm going to do that using this pink stuff. I'm pretty sure I have enough. I've got 4 balls. I think the pattern only calls for 3, and I have 4 for extra just in case. But that will be a late year project once I get some other things taken care of. Number 10 is a octopus dice bag. So that information is up here on the screen. And that one is just for me because I like octopuses, I like octopi, and I am a nerd. And I like dice, and I want another dice bag, even though I've got, I think, 4 on the go right now. And what I'm going to be using is this. I've got a ball of worsted Nerds with Needles yarn in the color Dragon Scales. This is the bluer colorway. It's showing up more of royal blue on the screen. It's actually a little bit more turquoisey in real life. And I'm going to use this to make the dice bag. I know the dice bag uses a couple of different colors. I'm not. I'm just going to make it one big blue octopus. And I'm really excited about it because it's going to be really cute. So my last spin that I got this year is from this bag that I found in my closet. So this is Northern Lights. This is a 50-50 blend of merino and mohair that Belfast Mini Mills made a few years back. I bought it a few years back when I first started to spin on a spindle, and then I never opened the bag. So I'm going to spin this year just to get it out of my stash. I think I want to do something really complicated with it. I kind of want to do something where I do like a chain ply and use do a 4-ply where this is one of the plies, and then use one of the whites that I get from the Long Way Homestead Fiber Club. Use one of the whites there, and then maybe dye a couple of the ones that I get that are also white black if I don't get a black in the meantime. So that way I can have 2 strands of black, 1 strand of white, and then 1 strand of this to make like a night sky, starry, aurora borealis sort of dealy. We'll see. The last thing I've got on my list is actually the Winterlight Cowl by Simone. I have a couple balls of Cotswold that I got from Gaspereau Valley Fibres. This is the same stuff that I made the February hat out of that I talked about a few months back. This is Cotswold from their sheep there up in Greenwich. And Gaspereau Valley Fibres is actually the company that owns Wool and Tart in Wolfville. They are sister shops. And I know that technically speaking, the pattern that Simone has written, I don't have the right amount of yarn for the colors that I have, because I only have 1 ball of each of these, and I'm going to use, this is my dark color, this is my light color, and it's going to be like a low contrast cowl. But I know that I'm 50 yards shy of the darker color, but I do have 50 more yards than what I need in the lighter color. So I think I might do some voodoo, or maybe do kind of like a half and half where I invert the colors halfway through to make sure that I use up both of the skeins and I don't change too much about the pattern. But it's on my wish list. It's going to be done. I'm hoping to get this done by October, there towards the end of the year, so that way I have it for next year. But that is my last thing. So to make sure that this video doesn't get any longer, let's quickly give myself a rating, because it's rating time. Since I only completed 4 out of the 6 of my Epic Whip Smackdown, and didn't finish everything. I only finished 4 of the 8 things I was going to finish on my Maker's Dozen. I don't know if I can really give myself a... You know what? I'm going to give myself 8 out of 6 projects. There we go. Because those are the total projects I was supposed to do, and I only did 6 total. I just, just reverse them. That's how math works, right? Right? I'm going to be an accountant in a couple of years. Anyway. So if you still think I'm the worsted, because I've decided I'm going to keep that, because that's my line, and nobody has claim over that except for me. If you think I'm the worsted, please comment down below, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, so that way you're notified of new videos. I'm just going to kind of have fun with the channel this year. I think last year I decided to get up in arms about like being super YouTube-y, being really consistent with my uploads. The only thing I'm going to promise to do is do a vlog, do a podcast once a month. That's the only thing I'm going to commit to, so that way you can see what I'm doing. And then if I get so inclined to do another project every couple of weeks or intermittent, I'll do that at my leisure. I don't want to promise anything right now until I have really determined how much school is going to affect my time management skills. But until next time, which will be in a couple weeks, maybe next week, we'll see how I feel. I'll see you guys. Bye.